maybe the tiebreaker is Mike Golick Jr., college football analyst and co-host of Golo and Golick on DraftKings Network, and he was in the booth for Colorado and Oregon. What do you make of the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce situation?
I think these are a couple of kids trying to have fun who might be leaning into the bit a little bit, right? Like I've had people looking over the Zapruder film last night and found out Travis is wearing an outfit into the stadium that's from her 1989 collection in here. This announcement comes on the day they announced the Super Bowl halftime show she's been linked to, and now is just completely overshadowing it in the media. So there might be a little gamesmanship, but I think they're into each other.
Okay. All right. I respect that. Thank you, Mike. That's all we wanted to ask you about.
No, it's nice to be with a fellow Swiftie here, Dan. I appreciate it.
All right. When did you know it was going to go bad for Colorado on Saturday night or Saturday afternoon?
Honestly, I had suspicions before the season. I think they have done so much in surprising people in the first 3 weeks. Deion deserves an overwhelming amount of credit. But before the season, the headline was, when you overturn this much of your roster at a school that's a Power 5 school, but not one of the big-time blue bloods. This isn't Lane Kiffin doing this at Ole Miss every year. This isn't Brian Kelly at LSU or Lincoln Riley at USC, where you're going to be able to draw and still maintain some of the depth along the lines of scrimmage. That was one of the areas that was always going to be most difficult for Colorado. And that's what this Oregon program was built around when Mario Cristobal's here, and Dan Lanning, through now a season and change, has done a really good job developing, maintaining. So I had my worries going into this one, and they were confirmed within the first couple of drives. This was as lopsided a battle along the offensive and defensive lines of scrimmage as I've ever seen in person at a football game.
Any problem with Oregon giving the appearance they were running up the score?
No, not at all. And I don't think there's a single player on Colorado's team, including Deion Sanders, their coach, that would either. I always said as a player, I never cared about those end game politics. If you're bashing our heads in and good enough to go out there and beat us, it's my job to stop you. It's our job to stop you. Deion Sanders, at his core, is a Bowden guy. He's an old school coach. And so I'm sure that same second sentiment's been echoed. This is about us and about us needing to respond to this. So no, I have zero problem with that. Dan Lanning and company had an opportunity. All the conversation was about Colorado. All the coverage is about Colorado. And this was going to be their entrance, I think, into the national conversation. They announced it with authority. They know what this is. You got to do some politicking in college football in the playoff era.
What do you expect this next weekend with Colorado and USC?
I don't know if there's an amount of points big enough that you could give me. Now, I'll say this. It won't look as ugly on one side, right? Shedeur Sanders, I felt terrible for in this game. He was under duress pretty much every drop back, and he came into that game, hit more than any quarterback in college football, sacked more than any quarterback in college football, and that continued as Oregon put up historic numbers in that category. USC's defense, we know, isn't going to put up that same kind of resistance. So I expect Shedeur Sanders in this offense, even without Travis Hunter, to be able to move the ball against USC. But on the other side, for Caleb Williams in that offense, they're going to continue to be a buzzsaw. It's what they've always been. So this is the reality check, I think, for people that were parachuting in on this that weren't necessarily familiar with the realities around college football. Because, Dan, as you know, the Pac-12, probably the deepest conference in terms of competitors in college football this year as we get into October and November.
Yeah, my favorite game over the weekend was Oregon State, Washington State. I thought it was so much fun, and I don't know how many people watched it, but that was great. The ending of Notre Dame and Ohio State was great. You being a former Notre Dame offensive lineman, Ryan Day calling out Lou Holtz, questioning the physicality of Ohio State. But as I said a couple of times already, Ohio State's physicality has been questioned. When you lose to Alabama, when you lose to Clemson, when you lose back-to-back to Michigan, yes, it should be questioned. Notre Dame, Ohio State came down to what, in your opinion?
One team making the plays, the other didn't. Everyone's going to focus on Notre Dame having 10 players on the field the last two plays of that game, which is inexcusable for the coaching staff, Marcus Freeman, Al Golden, the defensive coordinator, and the veteran players. There's enough old heads on that defense in key spots where somebody should have noticed at some point and didn't. But you look, there were multiple dropped interceptions by DJ Brown, Notre Dame safety. There were multiple 4th and 1 opportunities with a great offensive line and a big-bodied running back. For somebody to go out there and make the play, you had the ball up 14-10 with a chance to run out clock with 3 or 4 minutes left, and instead take a loss on first down and start throwing, stop the clock, and do Ohio State a bunch of favors. They gutted this one out. And while, yes, the questions about toughness compared to prior regime, compared to their most heated rival in Michigan, I think were the impetus for all this, right? Lou Holtz was wrong place, wrong time. Octogenarians, I don't think in general have to hide from Ryan Day. I think this was the straw that broke the camel's back, because he's probably heard it from his own fans. Because when you lose that game, we saw on the other side, when Jim Harbaugh was losing that game, it didn't matter how many of the rest you win or how you did it. If you don't beat that team, things are going to go badly for you, and the fan base is going to start calling for your head. So I'm sure Ryan Day's been sick of hearing about that from everybody, but the toughness really did shine through for his team, and not in some of the questionable fourth down calls or decision making. I look squarely at, you're a reflection of your best players, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is your best player. And after he went down with that ankle injury in the middle of that game, I was worried about him for the next couple of weeks. We've all seen ankle injuries, but that one got clipped and rolled up from behind in a way that looked devastating. And that man went in the blue tent, patted that thing and taped it up, and came back out. Wasn't just a decoy. He was a target for them. And I think that's something you can point to if you're Ryan Day, as a reflection of, these are the leaders and people we're counting on in this team who found a way to grit out one of the best wins in college football on the road this weekend.
He's Mike Golic Jr. He's co-host of Gojo and Golic, my bad. Gojo and Golic on DraftKings Network, and he was on the call with Colorado and Oregon. Alabama's demise, maybe greatly exaggerated there. They picked up a win. Not pretty, but then we do give style points in college football, but what do you take away from Alabama winning this game?
Yeah, and I think we're used to style points with Alabama. Really, oddly enough, since the guy across the field coaching Ole Miss got to Tuscaloosa and Lane Kiffin back in the day, this had been a pace and space offense. They had taken what was the Big 12 moniker for so many years and applied it to the SEC West. They had back-to-back Heisman candidates and Heisman winning quarterbacks, first-round draft picks at that spot, and wide receivers like Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith that lit up scoreboards. And it's been anything but this year. It's been more reminiscent, or at least I think morphing and trying to morph back into what was at one time Alabama's MO, the boa constrictor we talked about for years. I think they've got the personnel to live more like that. And I think now that they've settled on the quarterback situation, Jalen Milroe is going to be the guy. He should be the guy. I get why they had the flirtation and had to try the other two players, but I also get why Jalen Milroe is going to be the right choice. They've got to decide if they're going to be the offense of old that, quite frankly, fits more with what Tommy Rees, their offensive coordinator's identity, was coming in to this season from his time at Notre Dame. Multiple tight ends, ground and pound, hand the ball off behind one of the biggest bodied offensive lines in college football and prosper that way, as opposed to trying and living to live and die with so many big plays, the way we saw them try and go blow for blow with Texas and Tuscaloosa a couple weeks back.
I'll leave you with this. The NFL, the oddest result of the NFL so far this weekend was what?
The oddest result so far, I would probably say it's got to be the Cardinals handing it to Dallas. And I get that the Dallas Cowboys walked into this game down Tyler Biadasz and Zach Martin. They ended up holding Tyron Smith out with a hamstring injury also. So 3 starters down in an offensive line that I think had quietly rebuilt itself into one of the best in the NFL over the last number of seasons. But this Cardinals team, you could really say for them the entirety of the start of this season, they've been a tough out in first halves. They pushed around a New York Giants defensive front that's got some dudes on it last week too. And this week they were just able to finish the job. And as we had spent time rightly giving Mike McCarthy his flowers for what he's done with that offense, Dan Quinn and the defense looking like the best in the NFL, we heard Dak Prescott sort of blame the media after saying, you guys had built us up, but I think rightly so, with what they had on defense, that firepower with Micah Parsons and that crew up front. And Arizona, who we had penciled in for the Caleb Williams or Drake May sweepstakes, has so far pushed back. Josh Dobbs has been exactly what they've needed at that spot coming over in week 1. So I think the Cardinals have been a wild ride so far this season and are going to continue to be a tough out for people.
When you played at Notre Dame, how much of playing for Notre Dame is embracing that people are going to hate you?
A lot of it.
Like Duke basketball, you know that they either tune in to watch you win or they tune in to watch you lose.
Yeah. Oh, you embrace that right off the bat. I mean, listen, on the list of things that you can go and hang your hat on there, you're not in a conference, so you're not going out there with the goal of playing a conference championship every year. You know that makes you different. You know the goal being national championship, and that goal having eluded us for a long time makes you the target for a lot of things there. But no, you learn pretty quickly on that you're one of those brand name programs, and I think that's why you come there, though. You don't go to a place like that without recognizing, hey, there's a ton of good that can come from that. And look no further than Sam Hartman, what being a top-notch quarterback for the first time in a while in South Bend has done. That guy's been a rock star so far this season, but people will also step up and be the first to tear you down. It's been a little different, Dan, and I've been super uncomfortable with how nice people have been since Marcus Freeman took over as the head coach. I kept feeling like I was getting punked, like people were going to jump out and tell me the joke was up finally, but it's still always going to be a polarizing spot because they're different, and different usually never goes over well. See Deion Sanders in Colorado right now.
Good to talk to you, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Appreciate it.
Mike Golic Jr., part of Learfield College football's coverage, and it's Gojo and Golic on DraftKings Network, former Notre Dame offensive lineman.